Well, my name is Clive Holtham. I'm professor at the Bayes Business School at City St George's University of London. And our theme today is education in the era of generative AI. Now, there's been a lot of attention on how we should educate generally about AI, but I want to focus in on two specifics. The first is relating to higher education, which is my obvious area of particular interest. And the second is not education about AI as a technology, but how might we need to alter all the other subjects in the curriculum, the non-technological aspects, to help us cope in an era where generative AI is having a massive impact on the nature of work, employment, societies, and global issues. Rob, would you like to kick off with some thoughts on this?
Sure, Clive. I'm Ron Young. I'm from Knowledge Associates in Cambridge. I guess I'm more interested in your second point, which is more broadly AI, how it will affect education across all subjects, across society. And I guess we'll talk about how the process might change as well. But if I could just start with the bigger picture, if you like. For me, I've always felt, in fact, this last 25 years, I've always felt, ever since reading earlier Drucker's work, Peter Drucker's work on, I think it was post-capitalist society, when he said every 50 years society rearranges itself. You know, institutions, everything rearranges. And some of that primarily is as a result of technological change and what that means. But for me, for education, it goes a bit deeper, because the thing that I've always felt was that we have good industrial economies. We have, in advanced countries, good industrial economic theory. But ever since, 2000 or even earlier, the knowledge age, if we can call it that, we don't have what I think we need, which is to also add to the industrial economic theory, a new knowledge economic theory, because the way we deal with knowledge is different to the way we deal with tangible things. In very, very simple terms, in the world of things and making things in the industrial economy, there are scarce resources. And as a result of scarce resources, there's competition. And in the knowledge economy, I've always felt that we're not so much short of, it's not scarce resources. Some people will argue that we're overloaded with information and we've got to learn much more. And what should we learn? What's the best things that we should learn? And it's not just about competition, it's about collaboration as well. And I've particularly, I felt the instruments are not adequate today. I think we need an knowledge economic theory with new instruments, not just based on resources and cost, but also based on value and assets. And we're seeing that coming through. I maintain that's what we've got to teach. That's what we've got to better understand, rather. And then when we get into the education system as well, that's where I feel, with that basic understanding of the need to adapt our economic theories, we can develop our education much better. That's my starting point. Should I stop there, really, for the moment?
Thanks, Ron. I'm interested, David, on how you're going to
Yeah.
build on that or go in a different direction.
So am
Yeah.
I. This is sort of going to be a flow of consciousness, if you like, because I'm not really too sure where to start. It's such a massive topic, and trying to talk about it in a constructive, structured sort of way right now is not totally easy. Certainly now, sort of, with the age of AI, we really don't need to learn. We certainly don't need to learn facts, but I'm not too sure we need to learn about anything as such, in terms of, indoctrination is, effectively what was done at school. The stuff that I'm learning about right now, that I haven't looked at a textbook at all. I just have a conversation with ChatGPT, and in 30 minutes, I could learn more than I could ever do actually in a month, because I can ask it the questions that I'm struggling with. It's a very personal form of learning. So I think we probably should be focusing more on learning to learn. I know that's in some ways a bit of a silly statement, but we need to understand how to learn better, and how to think better, how to make better sense of the world, how to make better decisions, how to innovate wisely, how to better collaborate. We need to do all of those things, and we've got this amazing technology to help us do a lot of that. The other thing I think at times is that we need to learn not so much to have the answers, but to ask the right questions. So to teach students how to ask the right questions, and then when you get the answers, to be able to question deeper and deeper. And again, so it's about having a conversation with an AI, but also it's about having a conversation with each other, because our real intelligence, I think, as a human species, is not our individual intelligence, it's our collective intelligence. And one person doesn't know everything. One person can make very big mistakes, like I think is going on in America right now. You've got to bring a group of people together to have an open conversation, to make real good sense of the world, and to figure out the consequences of what you're doing. Because another big part of this is we're now living in a very complex world. It's a very different world to my father's world, your father's world, or my grandfather's world. It's far more complex, and so the thoughts and ways of thinking about things are very, very different. So I'm a huge fan of a lot of Dave Snowden's work, especially things like his Cynefin model. She's not a model; it's a framework, isn't it? I've got to get that right. The Cynefin framework is an incredibly powerful thinking tool, and I would like even school children to be taught it. So some rambling thoughts from me there. Sort of still trying to pull all this together in my head.
I'd like to build, David, on a point you made about conversation. If we look, all the way back in human history, there's always been conflicts, whether it's within villages or between states and so on. So conflict is almost part of the human condition, and we've had various ways of dealing with that, including warfare. But it seems to me that within organizations, between organizations, we haven't really paid a lot of attention to educating ourselves formally in how to deal with conversation, dialogue, conflict resolution, and so on.
Yeah.
So in universities, we've heavily emphasized technical skills, and this dreadful term soft skills has been used to describe areas like dialogue and human to human interaction. And in fact, these so-called soft skills, to me, are the really difficult things. Knowledge, as you've both said, can be encoded now in a way that makes it very easily accessible to us. So why don't we focus more of our educational process from kindergarten upwards? But, we're going to have to address this seriously in higher education on these essentially human qualities, and human qualities that have been problematic all the way through history. We haven't cracked collaboration, conflict resolution, dialogue. And I feel that there's no excuse now because we can reduce the amount of time spent on absorbing knowledge, there's really no excuse not to give serious attention to this and to do this independent of technology. I think one of the things that I'm very keen on in higher education is that we don't fall into the trap of trying to use technology for humanistic purposes. So, Ron, I'll come back to you now to see your response to both David and myself.
Yeah, I'm a great believer in using technology wherever. Let me start by saying that for me, when I look at education, when I look at technology, when I look at the things you've just been talking about, dialogue and conversation, absolutely vital. What has AI brought to it? Well, what it brought for me, and what I'm hearing others saying, is not only the obvious thing, which is it can customize people's pace, but what really interests me is that it even goes beyond that, because it adds another level of motivation. What I mean by that is that evidence is now coming out that people having conversations with AI are getting remarkable results in therapy. The AI is doing a really good job in that form of conversation, that therapy. But when I look at that in business, that's coaching, that's mentoring. We're all coaching we're increasing the motivation. A good coach, a good mentor increases the motivation of people to do things. And I think AI is going to really do some good there. We're already seeing it. I'm having relationships, conversations with my AI every single day. And I'm motivated by it. I learn from that. And so I wonder, I'm not sure that we need knowledge less. I think that we're in a privileged state. You touched on it last week, Clive, when you said that David has an abundance of knowledge and expertise and insight, which younger students don't have. So how do we give those younger students that? We can't bypass that. It's the old apprentice story. It's the loop, isn't it?
This is the piece one that interests me as well, because
Right.
thinking about it earlier and thinking, well, maybe we don't need to be taught anything,
Yeah.
but we do need some sort of framework.
Yeah.
So, in terms of maybe factual stuff, process stuff, what's the bare minimum that a human being needs to make sense, to be able to use, say, AI effectively, or to be able to interact with other people effectively? What's the minimum that we
Well,
need?
if I can build on both the
Yeah.
particular last comment, David, one crucial thing is what is commonly called critical thinking. Now, the term critical thinking, it has already fallen into disrepute because it's being used by AI enthusiasts to describe quite a narrow section of critical thinking, which is about logical thinking. So I'm trying to move away from a historically useful term, critical thinking, to critical inquiry, which is meant to include challenging the status quo, not simply applying logical reasoning to it. And I would even at some points argue for this being transgressive inquiry, where we really do seriously have to look at the underlying logics, democratic implications of what's going on.
Let's just touch on that transgressive. And I think one of the big issues we face, in the world is the so-called meta crisis. There's so many things going on. They're so intertwined. They are, so problematic that we need things like transgressive thinking, I think, to approach those sorts of problems, and whether it's at a societal level or at an organizational or even personal level. So I'm with you on that totally.
Ron, would you like to add or start a new direction for us?
Well, yeah. I mean, what about I thought of three things. First of all, we've touched on society and we've touched a bit on the process of teaching, but the content itself, I think, is worth considering. And I was talking with David about Demis Hassabis, his recent lecture at Cambridge University. He actually said, and I hope I'm quoting him right, but he actually said that today, a typical 3-year computer science course, the content was changed within that 3 years. You know? And we need a different form of awareness of the change that's taking place of the content, a faster content. What we seem to be talking about is the process is changing, the process of learning to learn, the best process for learning how to learn. The content is changing faster than we can ever think of. But I still think, and I'll still say that we're not going to solve it all until we've got a basic economic understanding, theory even, which is addressing knowledge and learning in new ways. We've got a long way to go. I don't know the answers. I just intuitively still feel that. But content is changing faster and curriculum needs to take account of that. That's what I'm suggesting.
And I think that's a really interesting point, Ron, because then, and I'm sure Clive can talk more to this, then what does it mean for sort of standard 3-year university degrees? I've got a feeling now if I went back in time and I was going to do a degree, I'm not too sure I'd want to do it. Mainly because I wouldn't want to be pigeonholed. Even before AI, I wouldn't have wanted to be pigeonholed by the curriculum. I mean, this happens to me every day now. I start to read about something, I start to explore something, with an aim of going down a particular path, and I see an interesting side alley or an interesting side path, that's going somewhere entirely different, and I think I want to explore that, and so I end up somewhere that I never intended to do, because I discovered something interesting along the way. And I found that an interesting metaphor for sort of education today. And so how do you create an education course that enables you to do that, given that every student will want to follow a different path? So Clive, I'm sure you've got
we're drawing near a conclusion or a finish here. I mean, one thing is clear: in professions, medicine, law, business, we have got employers who we're serving, and those employers have got a mix of current needs, on graduation, and also, if you like, longer term skills that will be needed in the longer term. So we're quite heavily driven by employer requirements there. The other is what is enduring in education. And I can't help going back to the ancient Greeks, because they were asking what is the right thing to do, and that is about wisdom. And in the Middle Ages, they addressed that question of wisdom, admittedly within a religious framework, but they took a very holistic view in the Middle Ages, because they included the arts, they included the sciences, they included religion, and over the last 100 years we've moved away from that kind of holistic preparation for life. So I believe that personally we need to combine, for those of us who are in professional education, the needs of employers and our graduates, but also with deeply generic skills of relating to wisdom, which is always going to be the tricky area for generative AI. Generative AI can mimic or simulate the appearance of wisdom, but because we are sentient beings, we have got access to feelings, emotions, experiences that are not going to be available to machines for many years to come.
I like that term that you said, deeply generic. What was it? Deeply generic skills, I think you used, Clive.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be really important. And those skills are probably going to be the same for pretty much everyone.
Yes.
My first thought.
Yeah, and I do like what you said. The words I like were holistic and practical wisdom. I think that's it. I'm also, humans are very curious, aren't we? David, you say you like to go in this way. We need to explore that a bit more, I think, as well.
I think curiosity is at the heart of everything. We did a what's the name? A Norwich cafe, a walkabout cafe years ago, didn't we? What was the word? The French,
Dérive.
Dérive.
Yeah.
And that was about curiosity. We wandered around what was Cass Business School at the time, being curious about the environment and relating it to knowledge. But you were teaching that at the university, I think, Clive.
Yes, it was. It still is an explicit part of our learning method. Drifting. It really means drifting through
an urban landscape,
geographical area, and looking for things that you would never normally notice. And that is a very humanistic kind of skill. And of course, we encourage the 5 senses. I did have one student who actually tasted a building, which I had to warn against future groups. But those 5 senses are pretty profound in our human condition and learning.
But I remember that Derive extremely well, and I've written about it and researched some of the theory behind it. But it was an amazing experience, and I think it should be part of every university course. But
I resonate with that deeply. I would love to know more.
Good. Well, our time is up now, colleagues. But thanks for yet another stimulating discussion, and we look forward to our next one coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you, David.